Montara Water and Sanitary District Board of Directors, calling the meeting to order at 6:35 p.m. I'd like to welcome everyone for this special event. Our team has done a good bit of preparation to try to bring some really interesting information to you tonight. We look forward to your questions at the end of the presentation. So that's pretty much my statement. I'm just glad you're here. Do we have any comments from the public on matters that are not on the agenda? If you do, raise your hand using Zoom or turn on your video and raise your hand. If not, I'm not seeing any. Let's go to new business item 1, strategic discussion on water supply and watershed protection. And let me hand it to you, Clemens.
Thanks. I'm going to let Allison start the meeting.
All right, I'm going to share my screen here. Hang on while I get this going. Wait a moment. I have to do a little moving things around. One more thing. Okay, so good evening, everyone. We're moving right ahead into our strategic discussion. This is our second discussion. You may have joined us. Some may have joined us on February 17th. My name is Allison Castema. I'm assisting the district. I'm moderating questions to keep this discussion on track for about an hour and a half. We have a presentation to start, which we'll shift into shortly. Tonight's discussion is intended to focus on the future of one aspect of Montara Water and Sanitary District's work. We held a discussion on February 17th on our sewer system, and previously the district held strategic planning sessions with the community. And those sessions produced a strategic plan, mission, and value statement that are all in use today and continue to guide the work of the district. Tonight we'll be delving into the water system. There is some crossover between what we presented on the 17th and tonight. So if you joined us for that previous presentation, just bear with us as we make sure that everyone has the same type of background. And you'll see that in the presentation. Again, tonight, just as we did previously, if you would like to ask a question, you can chat directly to me during the meeting, during the presentation, and I'll try and insert or bring those up at the end. And in addition, we do plan to have time at the end for questions that can be done by raising hands, etc. So with that, I will turn this over to Clemens.
Thank you very much, Allison. And I also want to welcome everyone tonight and thank you for participating and your interest. And we're happy to share, but the questions that we want to ask you tonight or the information that we want to bring to you tonight. So here with our first slide, I just want to say that I'm here since 2002 with the agency.
I have a 230 LAFCO legislation.
And since 2008, I'm the general manager of the Montara Water and Sanitary District. We are a local agency here in Montara Moss Beach that is really focused on public health, environmental, and watershed protection. So we deliver our critical services with a focus on affordability while serving the needs of this community. So that means that we sometimes take action that isn't related directly to water and sewer. It may seem, for example, I mentioned last time that San Mateo County planned early in the 60s to make Graywell Cove landfill, and this agency was instrumental in preventing that. Or, for example, more recently, we were involved in helping San Francisco Public Utilities Commission review a project that they had planned for construction on top of Montara Mountain. It's actually within our watershed. And they are now reconsidering this and restoring the mountaintop, for example. So just looking backwards, we were found in 1958, and that was originally to address the sewage situation. It was desperately needed to organize and get a public system in place. With the sanitary powers came also the oversight over the solid waste disposal. So the district is tasked with managing a garbage contract currently with Recology. And of course, we're doing that also with the needs of the community in mind. That means mainly to ensure affordable rates and the services that our community members need and want. Of course, solid waste also serves the environmental protection mission of our district. In 2003, then we acquired the privately owned and managed water system. I know that many of you were here during the time and actually saw what happened before this public agency took over. The mismanagement of the local water system led to water quality issues, and also water quantity issues. There wasn't really enough water to supply the community during peak demands. Today, every day, we deliver drinking water to our 1,600 customers, 1,600 connections here in Montara and Moss Beach. Next slide, please. This is again an overview of our entire staff. That includes our board, our elected board, and our board members are here tonight. So you see Rick right there, and you're gonna get a chance to talk to the others as well. We have a total of 8 employees. You see, we have a very limited admin staff. Sonia is taking care of our water billing. Tracy is our district clerk. She's, besides picking up the phones, taking care of pretty much anything that I can't take care of as general manager. So there is quite a bit that we three have to tackle. You may know our field staff just from interaction in Montara Moss Beach. Clinton, Derek, Reason, Nick, and Julian are out there every day making sure that the water flows. And they're doing a tremendous job. Who's not here listed is the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast Side staff. We have, outside of the joint powers agreement, we have a separate contract with the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast Side that allows us, instead of hiring in our own sewer staff, we actually utilize the SAM staff. So they're assisting with the maintenance and cleaning of our own sewers, and you may see them in the community as well. The next slide. Also a slide that we showed at the sewer presentation. This is really where water and sewer come together. So from the water collection and distribution to sewage collection, treatment, and discharge, we local and manage every step of this water cycle. It's a very unique situation. We're so close to the coast side, have our precious Montara Mountain right in our backyard. And so our water is gathered locally, pretty much everything on the mountain. So we're using Montara Creek mainly as a surface water source. And then also we have a number of subsurface groundwater wells. So once again, very unique to our community, and we're lucky to fully control our resources, both drinking water and sewage. That's not a given in California. So other communities, for example, Pacifica, that's North Coast County Water District, City of Half Moon Bay and the Coastside County Water District, they just have a different set of entities and different set of considerations that they have to make when they look at this water cycle. They import water, so it's a much bigger situation for them. And we're going to proceed with this discussion so that you will see where we may want to take further action to locally manage our water. Next slide. So this is what we're doing tonight. I'll provide an overview of our drinking water system, just short and brief, and also of those of the neighboring coastside communities, just as a comparison where we are how is our situation compared to them. And then we're taking a look at the regulatory controls that we have to follow. And that allows us to really dive into then this discussion. And we're going to start this. We're going to provide an overview of some of the considerations for the next 10 to 50 years. Next slide. So to our situation is special. We are the only agency on the peninsula that relies 100% on local sources. There's not that many agencies in actually also in inland California that are in this situation. So we deliver our drinking water again to roughly 1,600 connections in Montara and Moss Beach. We rely on a combination of surface water. We currently utilize Montara Creek as a water source, and we have a total of 12 groundwater wells for all of our water needs. And we're going to show you later that our supply today is adequate to serve our needs, but we can't stop planning for the future. For example, drought is today a topic and will be in the coming months. So we always look at the water needs of our community. And even though we have a wonderful situation now, we have to start thinking about the future. And that's what we're doing today. Next slide. So all drinking water really receives treatment. So I said we collect two forms. We have surface water and we have groundwater. The surface water is first filtered, that removes particles. Then all water systems disinfect the water. That's done to kill any pathogens. And that's regardless if it's coming from wells or from surface water. When we deliver this water, this disinfection has to be maintained throughout the storage and also throughout the pipelines. We have to disinfect all the way to the customer. That's the legal requirement. Next slide. And also, one advantage of being a smaller agency is this type of disinfection. We are a chlorine system, means we use regular chlorine bleach to disinfect our water. Larger agencies can't do that. They have to use chloramine. Chloramine is actually not very good at disinfecting water, but it is very good at keeping a residual for a very long time. So in larger systems, larger distribution systems, water just needs a lot longer from being produced to get into the customer. And that means that chloramines have to be utilized for pretty much all larger systems. Chloramines can create problems. For example, fish don't like it. Your aquarium fish are going to die. There's also some health effects that, or some effects with certain health treatments. For example, dialysis machines are extremely sensitive to chloramine. We actually had people move into this community because they depend on dialysis machines and require chlorinated water. Want to also point out the natural occurring fluoride. It's also something that is unique to our granitic aquifers. We have the proper amount of fluoride naturally occurring. So the recommended health goal from the dentist organizations is naturally occurring in our water. And that is sometimes difficult to explain to dentists or other interested parties that think that we would need to add fluoride, which, by the way, can be extremely dangerous. This process of adding fluoride can be a dangerous situation. Our water treatment plants are really checked daily, at least once per day, oftentimes more. And we can run the entire system under manual operation at any time we want. Next slide. We've showed this slide also in a prior presentation. And this is really here again to remind everyone how complex our water system really is. What you see here, we understand the picture is fuzzy and there's actually even some information taken out. That's done for security purposes, but what we want you to see is the colors. These are all different pressure zones. So the complexity of our system is more comparable to, let's say, San Francisco, that also has a more challenging geography. And it takes quite a bit of maintenance of, for example, pressure regulating valves and other facilities through our staff to keep this all in working order. Next slide. So here are our watersheds in the community, and also a little bit extended into our neighboring Granada Community Services District and Coastside County Water District. So all of our drinking water comes from within this area. The Montara Creek watershed is our main source of drinking water, although some of our wells are within other local watersheds. Next slide. Okay, so there is a lot going on here, and you don't really have to read all this text, but it gets us back to the water cycle, where essentially we see this complete hydrological cycle. So we have rain falling, part infiltrates the soil, some may evaporate or run off into creeks and rivers. There's also plants that interact with this and take up a portion of this moisture and then lose it through transpiration to the atmosphere. But ultimately, what really happens is the rain infiltrates more deeply and eventually accumulates above an impermeable bed, saturating really the available pore space. Depending on the type of aquifer, it's pore space, or it can also be, like in our Montara Mountain case, fractures that are filled with this water and then are forming an underground reservoir. What I particularly like about this picture is that the creek is really properly shown as a bottom of an aquifer. That's what it really is. It's a point where an aquifer is really open. So our local groundwater comes from this combination of subsurface water, and it's replenished from local precipitation and also fog. If you're interested in our fog research, we are active on this front as well, and participate in several studies to find out how is the water quality from fog that is precipitated here, and also how much of our water actually comes from fog. Next slide. So here we're looking again at these two types of groundwater aquifers that we think are important here to understand. Let's take a look at the right one first. This is really an alluvial aquifer. So this is non-consolidated sediments, pore space above bedrock. And these are our shallower aquifers. This is the type of situation that most private homeowners that have a well would tap into. On the left, we have the hard rock aquifer, and that's not a very typical situation for water production. But in this district, we're utilizing this. This is something rather new in this area. It is counterproductive to drill deep into a solid rock, a solid piece of granite, which Montara Mountain was thought to be. But by now we understand a bit more about the geology, and particularly if we look at the regional geology and understand that Montara Mountain's been moving northward since about 30 million years and really is the ram head of the Santa Cruz Mountains and heavily fractured. So that allows for Montara Mountain to actually contain aquifers that we take advantage of. And the predictive productivity of an aquifer really depends on its ability to store and transmit water. Next slide. Okay, so we're actually taking a look to our neighboring agency south and what are they doing? What is their water supply situation? Coastside County Water District. Coastside County is serving Half Moon Bay and the unincorporated areas of Princeton and El Granada. Coastside County Water District relies primarily on the Hetch Hetchy regional water system. They get about 90% of its supply through that system. And there is a portion of the 90% are collected in Palacitos watershed, but they still heavily rely on imported water supply. Next slide. So this is now Pacifica. This is North Coast County Water District. They rely entirely on Hetch Hetchy regional water system for its supply. So it's all imported water. Even though we have to mention that the city of Pacifica, not North Coast County, but city of Pacifica has a recycled water plant in place that serves some smaller irrigation needs in the community. The next slide. So all of the water agencies in California are really subject to a variety of regulatory agencies and permit conditions, and we list a number of them here. I'm going to point to, under local oversight, you see San Mateo County, you also see the Coastal Commission. I'm going to point to the Coastal Commission because this is really most agencies aren't subject to Coastal Commission jurisdiction. We're in the coastal zone. So only the agencies that are really very close to the ocean, with exception of San Francisco, LA, and so on, the larger ones, all the smaller agencies along the coast are subject to Coastal Commission jurisdiction. And that adds a significant layer of to our permitting requirements. Next slide. So here we get really into the look or the discussion to the next 10 to 50 years. And there are a number of things to consider. We're going to review some of them in further detail shortly. And I just want to mention here that we're not going to delve deeply into the age of our water system assets, but it's really a key driver to our discussion tonight. Because over the next 10 to 50 years, our wells, our treatment and distribution system will need significant investment. So we understand that within the next 50 years, a lot needs to be replaced or designed new. And we've mentioned this in the prior presentation as well. So understanding that, just as any homeowner is facing a new roof or a major repair of their home, will have to look at the opportunity and cost of their renovations that could occur. We also should look at the cost and opportunity that can come when we address the needed infrastructure investment. So we have to spend this money. And really the question is how? For example, thinking, we talked about this on the sewer side, where in the 70s there was a push 40, 50 years ago to consolidate treatment for wastewater. That's why we have this consolidated regional sewer authority mid-coastside plant. We now see more of an interest in a decentralized treatment. And we see a similar situation really here in water systems today. So we just showed you Coastside County Water District, North Coast County Water District relying heavily on imports. That was also an idea that was preferred decades ago. by now, the Department of Water Resources understands very well and asks all agencies to increase their source portfolio and consider local sources. So we've actually done a lot of heavy lifting coming from an agency that doesn't have enough water. That was really in a very dire situation, and we now turned this into a huge advantage. Owning our own water sources is a tremendous asset to this community. Next slide. So we're going to now look at some regulatory changes potentially in California. And we're tying this now back to the February 17 meeting. And if you joined us there, you probably saw this. So these are regulatory changes that are really affecting our sewer side. And when we look forward, we have to be aware that the state of California had legislative proposals to require zero discharge from sewage plants. We currently send all the effluent into the Pacific Ocean. Some proposals have suggested 100% recycling. And we mentioned there that it's technically simply not feasible. So it gives an understanding that these are, of course, suggestions from politicians down to the regulators, but there's not always a full understanding about these topics. And there are some significant technical challenges to both of these proposals, a zero discharge from sewage plants or the 100% recycling, and we talk about this a little more. But these are some of the challenges that we are going to see in the future. Next slide. Okay, so in addition to these regulatory changes, we also have to consider and plan for drought and other natural disasters that can impact our system. We have taken a lot of effort in studying our resilience, particularly to drought conditions. And you're going to see very shortly here that we're well prepared to serve our community. But that doesn't mean that we have really water to waste. Also, we're well prepared to operate and deliver drinking water in times of crisis, and we've done this in the recent years. We've been tested through for example, the power shutoffs in recent years. Next slide. So then we're going to really think about where are our future sources? Where might this water come from? And so let's take a look at what our system capacity is and where we might look for additional water supplies if they're going to be needed. I'm just going to point to our website. Anyone who has interest in this, for example, there's a 2017 Water System Master Plan available. Larger agencies are producing an urban water management plan. We essentially put the same information in the Water System Master Plan. There is many other documents with similar information available. Next slide. So here is really a table that's coming from one of our planning documents. And so here's a couple of things that I think I have to add to this and that we know of our current and future needs. There is a growth limit applied, and that is through San Mateo County. It's a local coastal program for the unincorporated mid-coast side, and it's limited to 1% growth in these unincorporated areas north of Half Moon Bay. We have not seen the 1%, we have not seen development reach this 1% growth limit since we are able to issue water connections. Since 2013, we are issuing water connections, and we've added less than 100 new connections since then. So if we take a look at the numbers, you can see that our water supply is adequate. I'm also going to point to the drought supply capacity. You see that we are actually required, a very unique situation for a water agency. I'm not aware of any other agency that is required to set aside capacity for drought. We had to do this through Coastal Commission, and there's quite a large volume of our capacity that's reserved for drought contingency. But what you can see is that our water supply is adequate, and what's more important to us really here is that it's sustainable for Montara, and it can serve our community now and also, as you can see, into the future. I do need to point out it's not enough water to export or sell to our neighbors. If you take a look at the water needs in our neighboring communities, they are much, much larger. And so whatever water we could supply to them would be meaningless. We would run into an unsustainable situation. So our watersheds and aquifers have limitations. I think that's very important to understand. Next slide. So what I'm taking from this slide is really that with a total supply capacity of almost 1 million gallons per day, there is enough supply for this community for the next 10 years and beyond. That's even under drought conditions. That includes the larger projects that are planned through San Mateo County as well. Next slide is already up, thank you. So we're looking at our water storage. Is that adequate, yes or no? You can see we have significant storage, 1.4 million. That's adequate for today as well as for future community needs. I'm also going to point out, there's a total of 1.4 million available. All of that storage is available for firefighting purposes as well. And I think it's important to understand that the only number that really changes these requirements is adding new customers. So it's the operational storage that's directly related to the amount of water necessary to meet the peak demands. And so that is really what drives the volume of the tanks. But as you can see, there is enough water for those needs. We are in compliance with the regulations that are related to water storage requirements, and we have sufficient storage to serve our existing customers. And we also can handle some new projects coming in. Next slide. So conservation, I really like to refer as a source of water. The wise use of water is our best mechanism to preserve our water supplies. And of course, we're not alone in this effort, particularly now. I think we're going to see conservation messages put out throughout the entire state of California. We're entering a new drought period, and with that, we see a very consistent messaging all throughout the state. And of course, we're going to participate in this messaging as well, and going to ask everyone to conserve water. State and federal legislation have really helped us over the years to implement stronger efficiency standards for plumbing and fixtures. And we also await further efficiency standards coming within the next couple of years. So they're going to tighten down even more. And I think what's really important here is this is something that the community does. It's really the community participation that conserves water. And we're very lucky with our customers. So thank you very much for conserving water, for doing your job. We took over in 2003 over the water system. In 2009, we received the Silicon Valley Water Conservation Award for our low per capita consumption, or really for lowering the per capita consumption within those short number of years significantly. So just a reminder to turn off your water when you brush your teeth and use efficient dish and clothes washers. Do everything you can, please, including watching your irrigation to save our community resource. Next slide. Okay, so desalination is always an interesting topic. We get a lot of questions about desalination as a water source. We've studied desalination in 2007. We actually went as far as drilling exploratory wells. I can tell you it's a very costly endeavor with definite impacts that would need to be addressed. This desalination process requires a significant amount of energy, and that comes along with a high carbon footprint then, of course. There's also byproduct, concentrated brine that needs disposal. Actually taking the water out of the ocean is also not as simple as it sounds like. There's a lot of infringement. So desalination is an option, but there are better options, we think, that can meet our needs. Next slide. So here we get into the recycled water considerations. With this look into the future, I think that's really what we should consider at this time. And we've talked about this also at the February 17th sewer discussion. Currently, the state limits the use of recycled water to irrigation, which is a way to get the water into the ground. And that means it then can be later actually taken out at a different point and with a lot of detention time. There is cooling systems that are allowed. Toilet flushing uses are currently allowed. And groundwater augmentation with this retention time, for example, through irrigation. The state has indicated that it will issue new regulations allowing surface water augmentation, and that means that now recycled water would be, one would be able to put it into reservoirs. Again, we're expecting that this goes along with some retention time. There was also talk about direct potable use. That means that recycled water would then be put directly back into the drinking water tank. And I'm going to just caution everyone that this is not as simple as it seems. We've seen Bill Gates drink some recycled water, and I think a lot of people have the understanding that there is only the perception issue, but there is a lot more issues that come along with direct potable use. There's some contaminants like hormones, for example, or others that are in really the spotlight right now, like Teflon, for example, that are very difficult to remove. So again, our advantage here as an independent water and sanitary district is that we can make our own decisions regarding sewage and providing us for opportunities for recycled water. So we could think along the lines of, is there a way to replenish our aquifers with recycled water? There's also, of course, a discussion about recycled water at the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast side. So if we don't utilize the SAM system, we have to remember that we have to address all of our sewage. That means the solids and the effluents. There is also the byproduct, the brine, the solids removal. And we also have to think about that there's always going to be an outfall, a need for an outfall, or other effluent disposal permitting. And we're going to show how this could look like. So really the question here, we need the sewage to produce the recycled water. So do we recycle at the sewer authority mid-coast side or within our community? Again, the question is, what's the end use of the recycled water? Is there a paying customer, or is there an environmental benefit, an improvement, an investment, stream restoration of some sorts? Also, recycled water comes with cost. There is energy that's used. Depends on the technology, how high really that carbon footprint then really is. And of course, we always have to consider the byproducts. But once again, back to, we have to spend money on our water system. And similar to what we talked about on the sewer side, there could be some reduction in our treatment cost at the sewer authority mid-coast side through this, for example. So offsetting some cost, and we think on the water side, it could look very similar. We just have to be smart in how we invest and where we invest our funds going into the future. Next slide. So here we're looking at this alternative for an ocean outfall, the effluent polishing retention ponds. So we have options to both address the potential legislative changes, retain more water here in our community, and to potentially provide additional benefits if we apply technology like this, for example. These pictures are from Las Galinas Sanitary District in San Rafael, and also from Mount View Sanitary District in Martinez. And these ponds serve as a great community resource. So it's not all water and sewage treatment. They're used partially as public park. They are a great education and science destination for schools. There is bird habitat now, so there's annual Audubon bird counts that occur here. So there is more to this than just a smart way of using resources. Next slide. So with that, I really want to encourage everyone to think along the lines of every drop of water that falls on this side of the mountain should be really protected. So it's really important to keep in mind that protecting our watershed protects our existing local supply. Also, what I think is important to understand is our existing water supply is low cost due to its high quality. We have the cost of our water under control. Agencies that import water have to pay for the import of the water. That water is owned by other agencies, and these other agencies are setting the price for the water. Then we're going to think along the lines of, what does this watershed protection look like? Are we thinking easement, land purchase, limits on land use? How does this look like? But we are in a very unique situation once again, and I think with that we can actually go to the next slide. We're surrounded by open space, and what's more important, this is all undeveloped. So this is really a wonderful watershed protection moment. This is an opportunity that, again, our agency has. One of the largest swaths of undeveloped land on the San Mateo Peninsula, that's Rancho Corral de Tierra, is surrounding the community. That whole area was once envisioned to become a patchwork of private subdivisions, ranchettes, golf links, but it was actually purchased by Peninsula Open Space Trust and then transferred to GGNRA, Golden Gate National Recreation Area, and is now federally owned and protected. So I think that's very important. Um, the largest swath of undeveloped land on the San Mateo Peninsula is the San Francisco watershed. Rancho Corral de Tierra is directly abutting to the San Francisco Peninsula watershed. So we actually benefit from this huge area. This entire Central Peninsula is not only undeveloped but protected. So this is a very good situation for an agency like ours that depends on local sources. We've here highlighted two large areas that are in private hand, and you can see they're not GGNR, they're in private hand. And I think it's really important that we want to first of all, we want you to understand that there are these areas that are in the same watershed that are still privately owned, and we want to just keep a very close eye on really what's happening in these areas to ensure that our water quality remains the same. Next slide. So, okay, groundwater protection. What does this mean? It really means that we have to protect our watershed. Watershed protection means groundwater protection. And as you've heard, groundwater is critical to our water supply. We are actually very engaged in monitoring and studying the groundwater aquifers in our area. It's not something that other water agencies are used to doing. But I mentioned that we're in the situation of taking advantage of the bedrock aquifer. So that's one of the reasons why we are looking very closely, doing some basic research, trying to understand their productivity, changes that may occur. And of course, what's really important to us is that we are producing our water sustainably. There is way too many areas in California that are way too many aquifers that are overdrafted, and that will be a detrimental situation for our community. There is another uniqueness in our area in the unincorporated mid-coast side, and that is that the county permitted a great number of private wells. So in our district, a number of folks are on private wells, but that is within the urban zone. So within an urban setting, more dense setting, we have a high number of private wells. I'm not aware of any other area in the country where this is the case. Private wells are challenging as they're rarely monitored or metered, and they essentially have a direct connection to the groundwater that serves the entire community. That can be a source of unintended contamination. So we're trying to work very close with the well owners in the district to protect our shared resource. We offer well testing for everyone on private wells that are interested in getting to know their water quality. This is something we do water every day. A homeowner really wants to turn on the faucet and use the water. So a homeowner with a private well may not think about the water quality in the same sense as we do, or we have other testing capabilities, for example, and requirements. We also have a conversion program that supports anyone who wants to move off private wells and onto our district's well-managed system. Another point that I want to make when it comes to private wells, they do need rehabilitation. They're not a forever water source. After some decades, they actually can require relocation. That could put these homeowners also in a bind. And of course, we're here to help if we can. Next slide. So, which watersheds are most critical? Meaning, where do we have to focus our efforts? And we're really just starting to think about this. But with the limited resources, we might want to think about choosing areas where we draw water on now. That makes most sense at this time. Next slide. So, um, so here we showed this also on this February 17, this slide. This is the northern section of our district, and there's a potential for further water protection in our community. There's a lot of options for beneficial use of recycled water potentially, or additional well sites. And we have to just be aware of and consider these options within our community. So you can understand why we look at properties for purchase or acquisition, for example. Again, this map just notes where these elements are. Many are privately owned. We don't know if there will be an interest in using recycled water, or if there is another way of cooperating with the property owners. But at least we have to start taking a look at this. Next slide. This is a similar look to the southern area of our district. So you see, there's a number of creeks that could benefit from, this recycled water situation, for example. Regardless of which direction we proceed, we have to spend money to maintain or change and upgrade our water and sewer systems. And I think we see a benefit to an enhanced focus on our local sources. And then again, the idea of where do we spend this money? Can there be avoided cost if we choose a different path forward and think about utilizing the resources within our agency? Next slide. So we're getting really to the end of this presentation, and I want everybody to understand that this is a process that will take time. So with your thoughts tonight, the board, the district will consider further action to take. So this is an informationary action, a discussion item. We're not asking for any action really today. So whatever direction we're taking, there's further detailed studies of engineering, feasibility, hydraulics. We have to understand the construction cost. All of this has to be taken into consideration before we make any decisions. So we anticipate further studies being brought to the board, and this is going to be a lengthy process. Next slide. And here we are going to return to our well thought out mission statement, where we're looking to manage fully and wisely our natural resources and full water cycle, provide reliable, high quality services at equitable prices, and ensure vitality for future generations. So with that, I want to, again, thank everybody for their interest, for helping us to explore our community's opportunities. And with that, I'm just going to hand it back to Allison. She can explain once more the procedures. We can take questions and hand it to the board.
Great, thank you. I will say, let me just, if you have a question, you can chat it to me. I know that Sid definitely has indicated she has a couple of questions. I will unmute you in a second. Yes, and Sid has her hand raised, which is also awesome. I will make mention, I know Sid asked for a PDF of this presentation, which we can make available. I'll just need to make the file later tonight or tomorrow. So with that, I'm going to unmute Sid, and you may have to unmute yourself as well once I've hit this in order to unmute you. And I'm going to lower your hand. So Sid, try and unmute yourself.
Am I
There you
unmuted?
go.
Okay.
Yes. Go ahead.
Hi. I have actually quite a few. So if you want to, are there other people that have questions? I don't want to hog the time.
Why don't you ask one or two and I'll see if I get any other questions. And I'm actually going to close the PowerPoint right now just so we can see folks, I think, if that works for
Okay.
everyone.
So my first question has to do with LAFCO and the dreaded word consolidation or merging. And I've heard that before when it was, I don't remember, several years ago, they did their municipal services review. And of course, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, their whole purpose is to always recommend merging. Is that not correct? Anyway, I mean, that's my take on it. So if another district needs water and we're being nudged to merge, what are our options? Can we be forced to share or merge? And were that to happen, would all the property owners in this district be made whole due to our investment over time via our property taxes when we bought out the Citizens Calam thing, $19 million worth? Do you know the answer, or is that too complicated?
Rick, you want to take the question?
Yeah, I'll take part of that anyway. I've obviously been vocal against consolidation. My main statement I always make is there is a formal LAFCO process for consolidation. It involves a lot of signature gathering, and then if successfully gathered enough signatures, there will be a vote between the acquiring agency and the acquired agency. It's my understanding that us being the acquired would never have a sufficient vote to be annexed to somebody else. That's the official process. Martha Poyatos, the executive director at one time said, LAFCO will never physically merge districts. That, however, does not include the county and it does not include the state. Our supervisor has been on board several times talking and promoting consolidation. So the problem is, will someone try to do something which is 100% against the will of the people? And that's kind of the unknown. We will get another MSR probably in a couple of years. Our schedule doesn't go out further than a year or so, so it's going to be a couple of years. What's happened when Broadmoor Police Department is this little tiny department up near South San Francisco. They're always recommended for consolidation. Last time they brought in like, I don't know how many people showed up at the meeting and said, keep your hands off of our district. And they're still independent. So we're talking to the county officials and asking around, but part of it could be out of our control. We just have to make a big fuss and keep telling local people, this isn't what we want, and this is a democracy.
Well, would they have to buy us out our investment?
They can do whatever they want to do at the state or county or level. I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but they could say, sorry, you're stuck with that if they want to. I mean, the options are infinite. So I can't say yes, and I certainly can't say no on any of that.
Okay.
Sid, I do want to mention, Greg has a question as well. So do you want to ask a second question and then I'll go to Greg?
I did have one. Well, I actually have others, but let me ask the one that I've got that right here in my fingertips. On one of the slides, Clemens, you mentioned that we have enough water for fire suppression and drinking use, bathing use, that sort of thing. But what if we had a huge fire like they did in the Santa Cruz Mountains last year, and we used up our whole tank, let's say? What's the recovery rate on that tank? How many days or hours would it take to re-pump enough water into it for, human consumption again?
So, I mean, in short, it would take about a day and a half to recover. But I want to point out that in any of the large fires, Santa Rosa, Paradise, for example, none of the tanks ran really dry due to firefighting. There was no firefighting. So with these scenarios, no water system is designed for wildfires,
Mhm.
and water systems aren't used in wildfire scenarios.
Okay.
It simply doesn't make any sense. These
So
fires are
that
so
kind of
large.
piggybacks on the other question, which is if we were to go the route of recycled water at some point through our sewage, maintaining our own sewage in those little package plant dealies up here, could we have a separate tank so that like Cal Fire could fill a water tender with it or something like that? Because I know you can't transmit it through the regular drinking water lines, but can you store it somewhere and say, hey, Cal Fire, if you need any, here it is, come and get it, or not?
So of course, recycled water can be stored and it can be used for firefighting.
Mhm.
That's all a given, but they can also just drive down to the harbor and use a suction pipe and
I
use salt
see.
water, for example. We got plenty of
Right.
that around. And also, I think when it comes to recycled water, what we're looking for is a use for the continuous stream of recycled water.
Mhm.
And taking just a couple of hours of that flow, putting them in a tank,
No.
is not going to really resolve this issue of where does this recycled water go.
I do want, I know, again, we've got Greg, but Catherine is raising her hand, and I believe, Catherine, you may have to just unmute.
I will. I just wanted to say we had a fire.
Oh, Catherine, you're really broken up. I don't think we can hear you.
Water. It's the connection. I'll try again, and if not, I'll just hang up. It says my connection is unstable.
Yeah, yeah.
Now,
Okay,
I used helicopters.
I'm gonna
I'll
go ahead and, yeah, I'll shift on to Greg. Why don't you, whoops, hold on. I'm gonna make sure I ask you to unmute and you unmute. Go ahead, Greg.
I just want to make a couple of comments on the LAFCO thing. When I looked into this last, LAFCO had no evidence of benefit from consolidations for utility districts. At the state level and in the county, they didn't have any case studies. They didn't have any benchmarks, benchmark databases of level of service, cost, etc. So we'll be talking more about this, I'm sure. I'll be writing an article. But I want to warn you, and I don't think I can disclose what happened, but I was contacted by a known local politician around here, just out of the blue, about a week ago, and she's going to be pushing for consolidation. So it's not going away. It's something I think we have to analyze and discuss in an intelligent way. So Sid, your question is, I think, well-founded. When it comes to the firefighting, I know the directors of the agency are tired of hearing me talk about firefighting water storage, but I will point out that there are some problems. Helicopters don't always work depending on the nature of the fire because they can't get close enough. And in addition, if you read the after action report from FEMA after the Oakland Hills fire, they flagged a couple of things that they think will work. Basically, you're abandoning the property and giving up rather than fighting it. But two things they think in that report make sense. And one was sprinklers on the outside of the residences. And the other was a form of closed cell foam. And I don't know enough about the foam to say anything, but I do know when I lived in San Carlos, we had sprinklers on the roof. So if that ends up being a preferred option, then that would argue that we need more firefighting water storage for the residences to douse themselves. Just by coincidence today, Clemens, that report came out about the new hotel. One of the community members analyzed that and said, geez, that requires 500,000 gallons of water to maintain that pressure for that long. So I know the code right now is you only have to fight one fire at a time, and it's a 2-hour designer fire. But I think there's going to be community interest in exploring this issue over and over again, especially with large joining companies or clusters of buildings that are denser and have higher firefighting storage requirements than a single family dwelling.
Thank you, Greg. I know Sid has another question. I do think there was a little bit of a chat here that asked the question that was regarding saltwater for firefighting. Clemens, do you want to just address that briefly before I go to Sid? I see.
Well, there's standpipes and harbors for this purpose, as well as if conditions allow, tankers are actually using, as far as I understand, salt water for firefighting purposes. It's really just if the ocean conditions allow that or not. Tanya, do you have any insight in this?
I might have to unmute her. Hold on. Hold on. If I have to unmute Tanya, I just have to get to her.
I'm here.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
I hear you.
It's customary in coastal communities to use ocean water for firefighting. Most fire departments, including the Coastside Fire, are equipped for doing this because that's an unlimited supply. There are issues, of course, of cleanup afterwards, but that's so much better than having the community burn. So, and it is unlimited supply. However, I have to say this is not Santa Cruz Mountains. You guys are much more urbanized than that. So I don't know if we can compare the Santa Cruz fires with this community. I don't think it's a apples to apples comparison, just my opinion.
Thank you. Sid, I know you have your hand raised. You want to go ahead? You have to unmute again.
Yeah, I think I am, right?
That's correct. Go ahead.
Well, just to Tanya really quickly, we do have Quarry Park. And just last week or so, I think they allocated money to the different parks that they're going to fix. I mean, start spending money on. They got some grants and everything. It's in the millions to do fuel reduction. But Quarry Park, I think it has 83 acres and they gave us a whopping $170,000. Whereas over on Kings Mountain Road, they have 82 acres and they got $362,000. So it's not being spread around equitably, but at least they are going after the different spots that are heavily treed. And yes, there's the fear of crown fires if a wind spreads embers, which can go for miles and spread the fire quickly. Anyway, that wasn't on my list. These are maybe questions for Clemens. One is, there's three questions I have. I'll start with the easy one first. Is when I know the mid-pen is coming up before the Coastal Commission this week or next week, but the letters have to be in by Friday, and I'm putting in a letter, but there's plenty of issues. This is just for the downzoning of the parcel. However, I wanted to get my word in. I don't know if there's ever going to go through with it, but at least the county is getting their land use downzoned to the 140 units. But I wanted to know if they've already talked to you, Clemens, and are they planning to be on individual meters as far as conservation goes? I'm sure if each tenant has to pay their own water, they might be more thrifty than if it's a group metering. Do you happen to know?
Well, so the first part of the question is, I did talk to Midpen years ago when this first came up.
Mm-hmm.
Second part of this question is, no, we don't have really a set of plans or anything that we could use to even start considering the project. So
Okay.
I can't answer that question. Don't know.
Well, I did type this into the chat, I think, but since I was late watching last week's meeting about the sewer package plants, is there a possibility, I don't know how much those things will hold, but if we were to put some up near the tanks along Buena Vista, which is the paper street that runs adjacent or through that project where our water tanks are. Could we use them as a guinea pig to capture their sewage and process it on site and keep our water that we've paid dearly for up here? Is that your cat?
That's my cat. That's
I
making
wonder, I thought there was,
trouble.
because your
But
background has the
no,
sanitary, I mean, the lighthouse behind it. I thought the wind was blowing at first.
no, it's
Sorry,
an animal. Sorry.
that's okay.
I'm gonna refer. I mean, I'm gonna refer this question to Pippin because I'm not quite sure if it's really technically feasible. I'm gonna tell you again. The question would be, what is the purpose? Why would we actually put recycled water facility there? Who
No,
would be
sewage.
the user?
If we captured their sewage, since
Yes.
they don't have a sewer main dedicated to that property yet, and this is all hypothetical. Let's say they do go ahead to build, and we are further down the road and know the outcome of the sanitary lawsuit, and we decide we want to keep our water, which sewage includes our paid for water that we bought ourselves up here in the district. We could do it via one of those package plants, is my understanding, right? We would recycle it out of a package plant and reuse that water. Is that right?
So you put the water in, and then you get some products out. And the question
Sewage,
is,
you mean, you put in?
yes, you put
But
the
they're going to
sewage
be
in.
flushing with MWSD water, I assume.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to understand. You're saying recycled water, but what are we going to do with the recycled water?
Wait,
What is
I'm
the purpose
talking
of that?
about if we somewhere down the road, they decide to build and we know we'd like to keep more of our sewage up here instead of sending it 7 miles down the highway, could we test it out by using one of those package plants for big, I mean, sorry, I guess said big wave, mid-pen. It's going to be probably 200 occupants. You know, there's several 3-bedroom units and 2-bedroom units and 1-bedroom units. So it says it's only 71 units, but several people are going to be staying in each unit. So I was thinking that would be one way of testing out those package plants as an idea.
Well, yes, so the package plant, you put the sewage in and you get some products back out of them.
Yes.
What is the idea to do with the products that you're getting out of them?
Well, that was some of my next questions, which was you used some terms that I wasn't sure how the process works. Groundwater augmentation and scalping plants. Are either of those have to do with releasing the recycled water back into the environment or not?
Yeah, I mean, that would be one option. And, you know, we would have to think about, is this something that makes sense? Is this,
Mhm.
you know, I mean, you know, just requiring them to recycle the water so we can test it out, as I heard you say, I think it's not going to work. There is we would have to explain the reasons why and why the community has this need. And that's what we're here to think through tonight. So we have to see
Right.
what could be a use for that, and what could we do with this.
Okay,
I
so
think it would be technically feasible to build small scale plants like those.
Mhm.
But again, maybe Pippin can comment on this, our sewer engineer.
Well, before he does, I was just going to say the idea that I had this was because in the years past, I heard some bickering going on with Sam and CCWD claiming that they would have the rights to the recycled water once the sewer plant treats it down there because it's in their district. So if let's just say all our users are flushing and showering and sending it 7 miles down the road, and then CCWD wants to have access to all the recycled water in order to sell it. My thought was we're going to have maybe 200 more customers up here that we could possibly keep some of our own water from going down there to be resold by a different water district. That's my thought. But
So I mean, in general, the idea of using the resource up here is really what we're talking about.
Yes,
So, you know,
yes.
that's good. And then there is this question. I mean, there were many attempts to get recycled water to Half Moon Bay
Mhm.
via Sewer Authority Mid Coast side, but there is currently not an active effort. So we don't really have any agreements in place. So I can't really comment to, do we
Right.
have a benefit from this, yes or no? That would be all have to be negotiated. But I think what I can say is, if Montara participates in a recycled water project, means spends money on a recycled water project, it should see some benefit.
Right.
It's going to be very cost prohibitive, impossible to get the water back to Montara. I mean, if it's, you know, recycled water produced in Half Moon Bay, getting, you know, the benefit of recycled water directly back to Montara is not going to be feasible.
Well, that's what I meant. If we use the package plant, we could keep our recycled water up here. Isn't that right?
Yes, some
Okay.
package plants would be the option to keep the resources in the community.
Right.
Absolutely.
And
I
then,
want, hey, Sid, I do have a couple other folks who are raising their hands, so.
okay,
can
well,
I-
can
Yep.
circle back on those other two questions. What is groundwater augmentation and what are scalping plants? When you get a chance. Thank you.
Yes. so-
Groundwater augmentation just means that we put that we replenish the aquifer. I'm going to ask Pippin to go into the scalping plants real briefly.
Thank you, Clemens. You know, I think the limitation on the first part of her question was, you know, could you apply a package plant to 200 customers? You know, we'd have to really look at what type of plant and the technical feasibility and cost per customer. You know, this approach that we're considering tonight and the last meeting is really, you know, we're starting from the perspective of all the district's resources and where the needs are and what those needs are. And that would lead to the next question, is what we call a scalping plant. There's different, you know, in the last presentation, and Sid, I think I suggest you try to get a copy of it. We did, I think it's posted, and if you can't find it, contact the district and we'll point to where it is.
I saw it on YouTube already.
Yeah, they pointed out some alternatives where, you know, maybe we keep using the SAM plant for some years or maybe in perpetuity, but we still want some resource here. And so a scalping plant is a terminology for essentially kind of a package plant that peels off some of that water and then puts some of the remaining product back into the IPS and sends it down to SAM. If we were to go 100% up here, we would then need to deal with the product, including sludge, solid waste like plastics and other things that are raked out of the sewage, and a possibility of a brine product if we're creating a high percentage of recycled water. So that's the difference, I guess, in terminology. But it really comes down to, as Clemens points out, how we'd want to use the water, and that would dictate the level of cleanliness that would be required, the different stages of treatment to get it to the intended use.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and ask Anne if you want to unmute Anne and ask your question.
Hi, thank you so much. My question is regarding Montara Creek. Clemens, you stated that that was the main source of water for us. And I'm just concerned, like other people with the Mid-Penn project, what requirements are you making of them during the construction process to make sure that the water is not adulterated in any way, being that the creek is right next to the property?
So first of all, I think there's a little bit of misunderstanding. Montara Creek is not the main source of water, but the Montara Creek watershed is what is the main source of our water. We utilize Montara Creek. We have a surface water treatment plant, so we utilize the creek, but the diversion structure where we essentially take the water out is high up on the mountain. So it's It's located there such that there is no development above it. It's pristine water. The Mitpenhausen development is adjacent to the almost the mouth of Montara Creek. So the environmental health agency, Sanitary County Environmental Health, is in charge of protecting the creek really at this point. We have an interest in protecting our water shed and water sources, but we also have to work with the agencies that have the jurisdiction on this, and we got to rely on them that there is no contamination that's happening. That makes sense. So there wouldn't, we wouldn't anticipate an impact to our sources from this development.
Thank you.
You. And I have it as Patak.
Yeah,
Tasek.
that's Bob.
Hey,
My questions are actually for Christine, the legal points. Using the example of a new roof is going to be an expense. You have to kind of prepare for it. If a homeowner knows they redid the roof 20 years ago, they may start to put some money aside. And so I'm hoping that whatever expenses we come up with, that we start putting something in a coffee can to be used, but it needs to be dedicated strictly for that. It can't be used for anything else. And I'm wondering if that can be legally done. The other legal question I have is for the water in Clemens's presentation, that we don't really have excess water. That excess water is needed to manage our system. So any merger or another district wouldn't get any water benefit unless once we were under their control, they would just take it and not give a damn. So are there legal restrictions that we can put on current use of the water that can't be altered in any which way? They must be used for our community. And the same with any funds we start to put in a coffee can, that they can't all of a sudden decide to use it. I always thought when I was on the board, if that ever happened, what we should do is just spend money like a drunken sailor so that they have a big bill when they and eat us, and hopefully be a poison pill. They leave us alone. So Christine, I saw you disappear, so I don't know if I'm just blowing steam.
I would just say I don't see Christine yet, but I know Clemens, did you want to address any element of that? I mean, I could offer some thoughts.
Bob, I think it's going to be very difficult to get limits on the water extraction in this scenario. I think if, with like a water protection agency that would probably have to be created, that involves now all of our neighboring agencies and really all stakeholders. The question is, does it involve the neighboring agencies or no? So I'm comfortable answering the question directly, but I have the feeling that
you don't have to.
Very difficult to implement any pumping restrictions in case of a takeover.
I've been part of that when this is not the first rodeo of this thing that's been, I've ridden that horse 5 times. So
yeah, the question about the extra money, putting it aside in a specific jar for this purpose. Yes, money can be earmarked. We can set it aside for a dedicated purpose.
Okay.
That's absolutely doable, and I don't think there is any legal problem involved in that. We've been doing similar things in the past.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Great.
Hi, sorry, I'm back. I had to step out to use the restroom real quick. Is there a legal question that I can help with? I think I missed it.
No, it's okay. Clemens can bring you up. I was asking for recommendations that we could do, not for any particular decision to be made today.
We'll take it as a good idea, Bob. Thanks.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, I don't see any additional questions from chat or any raised hands at this point. If no one, oh, wait, JQ, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, how you doing? Clemens, I really enjoyed your presentation. It was very informative and well thought out. So thanks for that. Thanks for doing that. I had a question about groundwater. You had mentioned that you do monitoring studies for the groundwater. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that just a little bit and talk about how do you monitor the groundwater? And do you have any results to date that would say anything about supply risk?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there is a number of ways in which we do this. So first, we are participating in the California statewide groundwater, what is it called? CASGIM. It's a program that was initiated through Schwarzenegger that ultimately requires participating agencies to provide groundwater levels on an annual basis. So we take groundwater measurements, share those with the state. We take groundwater measurements on a, quite frankly, on a daily basis. They aren't all shared with the state. But what we locally do, what's much more important is really, we have essentially monitoring program in place for our wells. This particularly started with the Alta Vista well. So there's a series of monitoring wells surrounding the Alta Vista well and various aquifers, adjacent aquifers. And we've been monitoring for years what is really happening in these aquifers, what is happening in the adjacent streams. So we have weir boards, we measure stream flows in Montara Creek, Daffodil Canyon, etc. So we're putting really a picture together on the effects of groundwater pumping, on the effects of precipitation to the groundwater, and are reporting in irregular intervals. The board is getting updates from our hydrogeologists on this. So this is resulting in publications, for example, at the Groundwater Resources Association. We've published already twice, and also, of course, in reports to the board. I'm not sure if this really addresses your question, JQ.
Are those reports available? Is that something you could post on your website for the public?
I thought they are posted, but I'm going to make sure that send them your way.
Okay, thank you. That'd be great. Thanks a lot.
I will just mention, I think I have a comment here that Coastal Commission has oversight on well pumping and set limits on the Alta Vista well in order to protect the watershed. Is that an accurate statement, Clemens, I believe?
Yes, it's a somewhat accurate statement. Yes. So Coastal Commission has jurisdiction over the pumping of our Alta Vista well, and ultimately we report our capacities. For example, the slide that we showed is something that was shared with the Coastal Commission. So we report pumping needs and water capacities to Coastal Commission. Absolutely.
Great. Thank you. Sid, you have your hand raised.
Yes. Am I muted?
Nope, you're good. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I thought I was. Okay, so Bob mentioned something that made me think of when you to put money aside for a specific purpose. I remember when the state came and took some reserve money from us a long time ago. So I would be in favor of, putting a little rainy day fund aside that they couldn't touch, or no one else could either. For instance, if another district were to do a hostile takeover or something like that. But secondly, oh God, on JQ's question, A while back, I thought I heard the state was mandating groundwater studies and that some of the wells down south of here were having saltwater intrusion. Clemens, do any of our wells have any of those issues?
No,
Oh, good.
none of our wells have issues with saltwater intrusion, but saltwater intrusion is a real problem on the California coast. So you're correct. If you're getting closer into the Monterey area, there is some significant saltwater intrusion problems. Here, again, we are pumping water at a greater distance from the ocean. But we have the issue of the high density of private wells that are actually taking water out, and that pretty close to the ocean. So we are aware of a slight problem along Montara Beach. So there is actually some minor saltwater intrusion that was reported.
Well, I heard it was Miramar had more of the saltwater intrusion in their water aquifer there. But anyway, okay, that's it for me, I think.
Great, great, thank you. I think that's all the questions I see. So, and it is 8:05, so I think we do want to turn it back over to Scott and the board for their comments and thoughts.
All right, Scott.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna work my way through the order on my screen. Peter, do you have any comments? Mute.
I'm grateful again for the participation tonight. It's always gratifying to see the participants and the comments and the questions. From my side, I look together with the board at the financial stability of the Montara Water and Sanitary District and try to help put money aside, as Bob earlier mentioned, for future infrastructure. Those are very important things to do. We have taken a step in that direction with the water reliability charge. We will keep a close eye on the future requirements for keeping up with modernization of some of the infrastructure. And yes, we are all participating in that effort. And so far, we have been quite successful.
All right, thank you, Peter. Jim, you're next on my screen.
Okay, I want to thank Clemens and the staff and Allison and Tanya and Christine for being here with us and the other board members, and for all of you people who are participating and asking questions and keeping track of what we do. I think that's really important, and I appreciate you all being here. Thank you.
Hey, Rick.
First of all, ditto on what Jim and Peter said about all the wonderful people in the community who are here and the staff. I just want to assure people that we've got 2 or 3 issues that are discussed at every single board meeting. One would be the obvious Half Moon Bay lawsuit, as they try to get out of their contract and stick us with their costs. The other items are, we talk about, we are now, Sam has launched a little committee to begin looking at all these other options like independent plants up here, what that would cost and how we get rid of the other things, and protecting our water supply through looking at land acquisitions and just general science. Every night we talk about that. So those are the things that we really care about and in our efforts to protect our community here. But that's what we do. So that's what we study every time.
All right, thank you, Rick. Catherine.
Hopefully you can hear me. If not, I'll apologize and just sign off. Am I doing okay right now? Is the connection okay?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, good. I want to echo the thanks to everyone who has participated in this. Please tell your friends and neighbors to watch it. thank you, Sid, for all those good questions. I want to say the first thought on this board is the future of this community and the rate base. We work both for both of those things because we know we are not a huge water district, and we can't just willy-nilly pass the costs on like it didn't matter. That said, as Rick said, pay attention to us. We need you to tell us when we're doing things right. We need you to tell us when we're doing things wrong. But having looked at so many different alternatives over the years, I think we are on the right track with this treatment plants. I'm attending right this next couple weeks the online Water Reuse Association conference, and there's a lot of exciting stuff coming out on it. But they love to make beer with it and have you drink it and this, that, and the other thing. It's not as simple as it's often presented. So there's going to be a lot of very thoughtful and careful planning done. And I am grateful that we have two fabulous engineers working as consultants to us, and that we will be able to become a recognized for excellence water district and sewer district in the not too distant future. And if you do drive down Highway 1 and by the Burnham Strip in El Granada, you will see a 200,000 gallon sewer authority mid-coast side flow management project going in. It was originally used to just manage wet weather flow, but now that we have the capacities that we do, it is now being used to help be able to work on the SAM plant and on the lines in a much more efficient and cost-effective manner. That, I am proud to say, is a project that was put together by the Montara Water and Sanitary District Board, and we have pushed this for many years. We always do look at cost and what is the most efficient way we can use our resources. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Catherine. I'd like to say first to the staff, Clemens, and everyone that helped with this great presentation. Thank you so much for the work, and I really appreciate your passion for really focusing on outreach to the community, because it's really exciting to get people involved, both directly in the meeting and knowing that other people will watch online too. And I want to say to everyone who showed up, thank you for showing up. The passion in the community for the community is manifestly evident. And it really makes it a lot easier to do this job, knowing that people care this much about the place where you live and taking good care of it. And not just from one aspect. Allison, you're still screen sharing?
No, it's, hang on, I'm gonna stop that. Something's happening. I think
It's, Sid, you're sharing.
Sid, you're sharing. I don't know how that's happening.
It's called Zoom bombing.
Yeah, I think
well, it's talking about passion. I mean, everybody wants to join in, and I'm grateful for that. Clemens, thank you for highlighting the staff, and especially for highlighting Tracy. In our meetings, Tracy is renowned for calling roll and doing roll call votes, but it's really good to call out that she does so much more for the agency, and we're really grateful for kind of some unsung hero work here. So thank you, Tracy, and thank you, Clemens, for pointing that out. And I think my comments about the water system, I would just like to say, look, you've seen the presentation, you've seen how our community has taken hold of its destiny with water by investing and buying the water system, and then investing in improving it. And to look at the presentation tonight, it'd be really easy to say, great job, let's just keep it like this, status quo is great, and it is. But what's even better, it'd be easy to take it for granted. What's even better is you can see that we have the benefit of people thinking forward to what it's going to need in the years to come, and we've been able to work together to start laying out, get an understanding of what we're going to need and what we could do about it, so that we don't find ourselves in some kind of crisis where we have to do something in a hurry and spend an extraordinary amount of money out of crisis spending. Instead, we're able to think about the opportunities that we have with the challenges that we'll face. And it's unfortunate that we're facing challenges like, aggressive other agencies wanting to get their grubby mitts on our water that you all paid for, that we all paid for. But even that sharpens our focus and helps us think really hard about what's good for the community. So as a team, it's fun to do that together. Having the community involved is even better. And I'm going to just repeat quickly what Catherine said: stay honest. We certainly invite your attention and your participation. And where you think we need some course correction, well, we all benefit from that when we get it. We've had some really good thoughts and suggestions tonight. That's going to fuel the discussion going forward. So with that, do we have anything else on the agenda? I'm afraid I'm hidden my agenda here.
Scott, just to mention, Sid has her hand up again if you wanted to call him.
Yeah, Sid, one last thing, if it's quick. I know it's a challenge.
I typed it into the chat and then I lowered my hand, but it looked like you were about to wrap up. Allison was going to ask it for me. It was when Catherine was talking, I wanted to ask, oh geez. Oh yeah.
I see your question. So you asked, is a two-parter, one about the recycled water rights debate. No, I think a lot of that got answered and sorted out. I think the notion that anybody but the one who sent the water down there had any rights to it kind of has been put aside. It's a bit moot now. Anybody could raise it again later, but I think it's pretty well settled. And there's been some really good advances in state water law that really go to clarify who's got the water rights. And then the question to Catherine or Rick: did they ever determine a source of the elevated BODs? I think that's Catherine shaking her head no. I think it's still an active area of research.
They've identified it down to like Princeton Harbor. They say the traditional person who creates the problem or business is breweries and distilleries. They have not defined that at this point yet. They're continuing to move monitoring devices around to find it. The levels have been brought down to within standards now. So they did there's a great SAM presentation, if anybody wants to go look at that, on the SAM site, that describes the entire history of that contaminant. But it's all been dealt with. And some of the future work SAM has planned is to create additional basins that we can use that would also help in that problem.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick, and thanks for the good question. Well, if that's it for the evening, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We don't have any reports, nothing else on the agenda. So if I hear no objection, we are adjourned. Thank you again, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.